All right, 5 o'clock, we will call the meeting to order. There, red, is that what I want? Okay, all right. Call the meeting order, 5 o'clock, September 17th, 2024. The meeting for the public hearing before the Sawyer County Board of Appeals is hereby called to order. 5 p.m. Sawyer County Courthouse, Hayward, Wisconsin. Present on behalf of the board, Al Gerber, Laura Rusk, Steve Kelsey, Dee Doblis, Jim Tiffany, and Joe Behrens. Also present is attorney, what's the hell is your name? TJ Duffy. And here on behalf of the board, Jay Kozlowski and Kathy Marks. Those persons desiring to give pertinent testimony will be afforded the opportunity to do so. As recognized by the chairman, that person will clearly state their full name before giving testimony. Each hearing will follow this order. Reading of the application, submission of the file to the board, applicant statements and presentation of evidence, testimony of those in support of the application, statements from persons in objection to the application, rebuttal as permitted by the board, and decision by the board. Orderly procedure requires that each side shall proceed without interruption by the other. All testimony will be addressed to the board, and there will be no questions or arguments between individuals. Any persons aggrieved by a decision of the board may appeal the decision to the circuit court within 30 days of the day following the board's decision letter. The day following the signing of the board's decision letter is the first day of the 30-day appeal filing period. This public hearing was published as a Class 2 notice in accordance with Chapter 985 Wisconsin statutes in the Sawyer County Record and the Sawyer County Gazette. The public hearing will follow this order. Approval of minutes, variance applications, new business, and adjournment. Okay, did everyone have an opportunity to read the minutes from our previous meeting, which I believe was January? Any corrections, deletions? Question? All right. All those, is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented? Laura Rusk, Steve Kelsey. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion as presented, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Mr. Chairman, we have one variance application tonight. This is a public hearing in the town of Glen Root, variance number 24-002, owner Marsha Edgerton and Peter Beckman, part of the southeast one quarter, the northeast one quarter, lot 1 of CSM number 3418, tax ID 18510. It is 0.52 acres zoned residential recreational 2. Application is for the construction of a 24 by 28, which would be 27 by 30 with eaves detached garage. Proposed accessory structures to be 1 story and located 62 feet from the ordinary high water mark of Nelson Lake and 41 feet from the center line of County Highway T at its closest points. Variance is requested as section 6.1 of the Sawyer County Code of Ordinances, Appendix B, which would require the prior granting of a variance for any structures closer than 75 feet to the ordinary high water mark. The proposed garage is to be at 62. And section 4.21 of the Sawyer County Code of Ordinances, Appendix D, which would require the prior granting of a variance for any structure closer than 75 feet to the center line of a county highway. The proposed structure is to be at 41 feet. We did have a letter submitted by the Sawyer County Highway Commissioner, which I do believe was forwarded to all of you. Mr. John Pino, again, the Sawyer County Highway Department Highway Commissioner, recommends that we would move the garage to 45 feet from the center line, which would have 20 feet off of the right of way. With moving it to that additional 4 feet, that would then increase the water setback from 62 feet to, I just want to make sure I had that in there. Yes, to 58 from the ordinary high water mark. So that was a late addition, which I've made amendments to in my staff report. Again, this board would have the permissions to kind of make those amendments to the case. We also received correspondence from the DNR. Did all the board members have a chance to read that?
Yep.
Okay. I will read it into record. Dear board members, Department of Natural Resources received notice of the September 17th public hearing concerning the variance request. The department is writing in response to the request for an opinion from the department under chapter 5969-2, sub 4, sub B. The Schneider versus Waukesha County Zoning Board of Adjustments decision made it clear a circumstance or desire of an applicant is not a factor to be considered when deciding variances. Further, the State versus Winnebago County decision established that economic loss or financial hardship do not justify a variance. As the board reviews these variance requests, please keep in mind that the applicant has the burden of proof that their request meets all statutory requirements for granting of a variance for each variance request. That is, the applicant must prove that they will suffer unnecessary hardship if the provisions in the county shoreline zoning ordinance are literally enforced. The Wisconsin Supreme Court made it clear that the burden or that the proof of unnecessary hardship by itself does not entitle an applicant to the variance. All three statutory variance criteria must be satisfied to grant a variance. It may be possible that the applicant will provide additional evidence at the hearing, which may change the conclusions listed below. Unique physical limitations. The applicant must demonstrate that unique physical limitations, wetlands, steep slopes, streams, rock outcroppings, or special conditions of the property exist that prevent compliance with ordinance regulations. The physical limitations must be unique to the property in question and not generally shared by other properties in the area. When determining if compliance is prevented, the whole parcel must be considered. No harm to public interest. The applicant must demonstrate that the variance will not result in harm or be contrary to public interest. The board must consider the impacts of the proposed project as well as the cumulative impacts of similar projects on the interest of the neighbors, the community, and the general public. These interests are listed in the purpose statement of the ordinance, and for shoreline zoning include further the maintenance of safe and healthy conditions, prevent and control water pollution, protect spawning grounds, fish and aquatic life, control building sites, placement of structures and land use, and preserve shoreline cover and natural scenic beauty. Has the applicant submitted a revegetation plan to restore areas in the location of the existing accessory buildings or near the shoreline? Question. Unnecessary hardship. The applicant must demonstrate that if the variance is not granted, an unnecessary hardship exists. The applicant may not claim unnecessary hardships because of conditions which are self-imposed or created by prior owners. For example, building a home in compliance and then subsequently constructing a deck without a permit. Courts have determined that economic or financial hardship do not justify a variance. When determining whether unnecessary hardship exists, the board must consider the property as a whole rather than just a portion of the parcel. Please note that these comments are in regard to shoreline zoning regulations and do not have applicable erosion control, waterway permitting, floodplain zoning, or other department regulations. It is the responsibility of the BOA to assure that the statutory standards for granting variance are met. The standards help to ensure protection of public interest, including the preservation of water quality and fish and wildlife habitat along lakes and rivers. Wisconsin's navigable waterways are held in trust for all people to enjoy. The shoreline setback is important to protect the water quality, natural scenic beauty, and fish and wildlife habitat in Wisconsin waterways. The department appreciates your commitment to Sawyer County water resources and protection of the public interest for future generations. Sincerely, Sue Vanden Landenberg, Shoreline Zoning Program Coordinator. We did receive information back from the town. The town had voted 4-0 for approval. The board approved the application if the garage was closer or attached to the house to exceed highway setback to 20 feet from the right of way. Now, I ended up contacting the town chair to kind of ascertain what does that mean. They had further discussion. I'm sure the applicants can discuss it as well, but they ended up looking at, can we attach this garage to the house, which would then give us a greater road setback. I did end up giving an additional map handout that you have in front of you. Just kind of listing where some of those setbacks would be if we were to maintain 75 feet from the water and at least the 20 feet from the right of way. We really can't fit the size that they requested in there. If we encroached upon the 75, yeah, we could probably fit or combine something that wasn't looked as part of an on-site, in that it would be pretty difficult to attach it to the house. You'd need a whole new roof system to tie in eaves. But I just wanted to kind of show the map of where the existing house sits, which is at 38 feet from right of way, where the 20-foot right of way would exist, and where the 75 line is, and trying to fit some type of 24 by 28 in there. So even if this board was to kind of look at the town's desires and try to get this attached to the house further away from the right of way, we'd still be talking variance. And at that point, it's really not a variance that was set up on this case. So the applicant at that point would really need to reapply for something that would be more of attached to the house. If the board wanted to go that route, I would certainly have in your motion that you would waive the 1-year refiling rule. There were 10 additional notification letters sent out to adjacent property owners. 0 were returned, and no additional comments returned. As part of my staff report, to just get all of that into the record here as well. Again, the applicant is requesting for the 24 by 28, which is 27 by 30 with eaves detached garage. An on-site inspection was conducted by myself on 7/8 of 24. We viewed it for kind of the best possible garage location, and this was the only area that size garage would fit and really be feasible. And it was offset from the house to allow for a future 200 square foot expansion on the north side of the house that the applicant plans. So they wanted to kind of allow that area for the driveway relocation. We do have overlapping setbacks that occur on this property. That is to say that the 75-foot setback from the lake and the 75-foot setback from the center line of the road would actually result in a negative buildable area. So that is where we did some kind of wiggle room between the lake and the road setback to kind of get it in that spot. And then again, in conversations with John Pino, the Sawyer County Highway Commissioner, he recommended that the garage be set back a minimum of 45 feet from the center line of Highway T, which would be 20 feet from the right of way. When a road reconstruction project would be conducted in the future, the highway department would be expanding the shoulder width by an additional 4 feet, and the additional setback distance from the road would provide for safer county highway setbacks. With the highway commissioner's recommendation, this would result in an ordinary high watermark setback of 58 feet as opposed to the 62 feet. And if the board was to approve that, you would certainly want to mention that and amend that within your motion. As part of the potential approval of the variance, the existing bunkhouse would be removed and the existing shed would be removed from the property. The applicant is also aware that approval of a reduced ordinary high watermark setback variance may result in additional vegetated buffer zone requirements. Again, that is a condition that you can put on with any type of approval process on this. From there, I have additional decisions, or I should say reasons for approval, reasons for denial, or reasons for tabling. And again, those are not all encompassing. If you want to add additional conditions, you certainly can, or if you want to use different findings of facts to support your claims, you certainly can as well. I feel like I've talked long enough. I will turn it over to you.
Just for clarification, the highway department suggested a 45-foot setback? And the town is suggesting a 20-foot setback?
So 45 from center line is 20 feet from right of way.
Okay,
It's the same.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And the town had recommended that the board approve the application if the garage was closer or attached to the house to exceed a right of way setback of 20 feet. So they wanted it further than a 20-foot right of way setback.
Okay.
That was the town. Again, I mean, pushing it further away from the road is going to push it closer to the lake. So there's that ebb and flow. If how far do you want to get away from the road? How far or how close you want to get to the water?
Okay. All right, thanks. Any other questions of the zoning office before we ask for testimony? Okay, is there anyone to speak on behalf of the applicants? If so, step to the microphone and identify yourself.
I don't know what else to tell you. We've spent 2 years.
Would you state your name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Marcia Edgerton.
Thank you.
We've spent 2 years talking to a contractor, and then we've talked to Jay and another zoning person came out previously. Where we want to put the garage makes sense to us because we don't, we have quite a long distance behind us, so we won't be bothering anybody there. But one of the big things is we right now park right off of the road, and we'd be able to get our cars off the road and down, where the garage would be. When we talked to them at the township, we were shocked when they said we think you should attach the garage, because that was never a part of any conversation we had with anybody. And our intent is, hopefully, in 2 years, we would take the house down anyway and put up a new house in the same footprint. So that's really the only place we can put that garage without bringing it real close to the house. And if we did that, it would make it more difficult. We can't move the house anywhere because on the one side, we have the well and the holding tank, and we're close to the lot line, and our neighbors have a holding tank just a few feet beyond that. So the house will stay where it is, and the 200 feet, I think, Jay, what we were talking about there was a small addition put on the cabin, and but they made it smaller than the house. And so we would just fill in that gap and, square the house off, not actually, to me, it's not that much of a change in a footprint. But as far as the garage went, we've spent a lot of time talking about that and where could we put it where it would be less intrusive to the lake and not create a problem to the road. And we'd be willing to give up those. So we have a bunkhouse and then a small storage building. We'd be willing to give up them if we could, put the garage there. We originally, the contractor suggested a 28 by 28 garage. And in talking to Jay, we came to the conclusion that that was asking for, too much building in that particular spot. And then we reduced the ask to the 24 by 28. And I guess that's about all that. Do you have any questions? Mhm.
Consideration of closer to the house.
Steve, you need to turn your mic on. I think everybody does.
Are we on? Okay.
You're not. You guys aren't on. All right. Laura.
The comment regarding the thought process and planning, you didn't give any consideration and you were surprised when the discussion turned to possibly attaching it or moving it closer to the home.
Well, moving it closer wasn't as much of an issue as attaching it. We never had any intent of having an attached garage, and that building has to come down eventually anyway, the house itself. So, that's something we wouldn't even consider. But moving it closer wouldn't be too bad. The problem is, we have these beautiful maples in the whole yard, and if we have to move that real close to the house, we're going to have to take down about 6 of those trees. And so for us, that was kind of another consideration. But like I said, there is room to probably move that 4 to 6 feet closer to the house, without being so detrimental to the trees that are there. We'd still lose a few, but.
If you move it too close, you can see the driveway on the side. So it goes in the side. Get too close, they'll have the access out the front. We're saying, let's them closer to the road, I think, because you'd have to access from maybe a new driveway out T.
Yeah, you should have your mic on so I can pick it up, but yeah, we looked at that. The driveway wasn't, maybe you can turn yours off. Okay. No, it's not yours.
Make up his mind.
All right. We looked at the driveway aspects. And it was something where it was gonna be really difficult to, if we were gonna pull straight in off of T, I don't know. If we're gonna pull straight in off of T, or we're gonna try to end up getting it to back out. Kind of with this curvature one, you would have some room to kind of pull in and back out this way so you could go front on to Highway T. Because there's some people that go pretty quick along that stretch.
And then that would be backing out onto the road to leave possibly, if they did it that
If
way.
you were closer to the house, you have to back out.
You'd have to back onto the road.
Okay.
Yeah,
We
this
have
kind
to
of
back
proposed,
to the road now as it is.
right.
And we could have the entrance to the garage in either direction. We could come in kind of from where we are right now and then swing in, or we could come in off of farther down on T and then have the garage come from the other direction. You know, either.
Well, Sir, you'll get a chance.
Just gonna comment on the, my name's Peter Beckham. And, there was a discussion of coming in from the opposites, instead of right near the house, coming in to the garage the other way and then have if that makes sense. And then it'll be a lot easier. You still probably have to back out, but I think it would be easier for the construction and wouldn't require taking those trees down.
Okay. All right, anyone else to speak on behalf of the application?
Excuse me, sir. Jay had some discussion. I'm sorry.
Anyone to speak in opposition to the application? Okay, hearing none, discussion by the board. Yes, sir?
I don't know the board, but I think Jay was discussing what kind of buffer is there now versus maybe what could be imposed. And I don't know if is there currently a buffer or not a buffer?
There would not be a compliant shoreline buffer in place. And again, with any type of approval on a reduced ordinary high watermark setback, this board does have the ability to mandate that as part of a condition of approval. Ultimately, to have a standard buffer zone would be the allotted 35% of the frontage. I don't remember what their frontage amount is. I can get that actually pretty quick. Frontage amount at 200, so they would be allowed as the standard 70 feet of width of a viewing and access corridor, which vegetation could be mowed and maintained all the way down to the water. Outside of that 70 feet of width, the vegetation is to remain intact and untouched back to a depth of 35 feet. So right now, they're probably closer to about 110 feet of width. And the vegetated buffer that they do have on the kind of northeast portion of the lot only exists to be about a depth of 20 feet. So if it is something that the board is looking for approval, I would certainly recommend that you would make it a condition that they also to establish the requirement of a standard buffer zone.
Applicants did you understand that last bit of information? Had that been discussed with you previously about this buffer zone business? Okay, thank you.
Jay, when you have the, so it's 75 versus 30 because of the size of the frontage, does that have to be contiguous? Or
No.
can it be two separate?
It can be either one. It's the entire width cannot be more than 35% of the frontage, which would be 70 feet on 200. It can be split. It can all be in one chunk.
I wasn't aware of that.
That changed in 2017.
Well, regardless of where we end up, if this is approved, the win in my mind is we lose the bunkhouse and the shed that are closer than what the new structure would be. And if it's approved with a buffer, that's gonna protect the lake more than what's there now. There are some positives to this.
I agree, Steve, that, those are very positive things. I just can't jump that hurdle that every lot is big enough to give people what they want or need. and this is a small lot in a tight space, taking that house down in the future doesn't sound like that's really gonna factor into, tonight's decision.
No, we can't.
Yeah, man, that's,
But because it was brought up, there are other options than this application proposal. And this is extreme, and I'm not saying that's what would have to be done, but if in 2 years they're gonna take it down, there are designed homes that could have a garage beneath. I mean, there are variations that could be less intrusive on setbacks in both directions. We can't go there, I suppose, at this time, because that's future and we can't dictate that.
It just struck me that with everything there, and I didn't have the diagram in front of me, but I saw the zoning flags right next to the house, and I thought, either gotta have this much buildable area, or which one was from the, or so they overlapped. There's just so much non-conformity. I mean, not even close to non-conformity.
Some of the flags that were by the house were for some of their future plans. So again, this dwelling is considered an existing non-conforming structure. So with an existing non-conforming structure, you have the ability to wreck and rebuild within the same footprint. You have the ability to vertically expand up to 35 feet in height from lowest grade to highest peak. And because it's beyond 35 feet from the water, you are allowed a 200 square foot expansion of the footprint no closer to the water than the closest part of the existing structure, or an area that's inside of 75 feet from the water. Existing closest point is at 66, so basically between 66 and 75, they get to expand 200 square feet. So that's where some of those other flags by the house were measuring for the applicants, not related to the garage aspect.
Right. But again, as it was brought up, that kind of all gets to be part of it too.
How much of a problem would it be to have the driveway come in from the other end?
To me, not at all. No, the county highway department would be the one issuing a new driveway permit. Generally, they're only going to allow one driveway access off a county highway, so they would have to abandon the one by the house in order to have a separate one further to the north, unless they county highway department granted some other type of provision, but that's something that's outside of my jurisdiction. That's part of their department and approvals. They look at line of sight, speed, all that stuff.
Because basically, if they had the driveway in a different position, they wouldn't be having the cars parked right next to the road, between the house and the road.
And they come in the other side of the bunkhouse is what you're saying, yeah.
You know, from this end of the property,
Direction that is west.
pull in there and they could have a turnaround. So they could drive out.
So, I mean, from a legal standpoint, I think the way you approach this is you take an element, you discuss it, do they meet that element or not? If you move the next element.
So we shouldn't be going there, is what you're saying.
Well, I mean, I think that's, you're still talking about it as a whole, kind of, that's what we're doing. But you can't make a motion to approve or deny without going through each, you know, is there an unnecessary hardship? You know, is it, the hardship unreasonable for self-limitation, setback, blah, blah, blah. I think we take each one separately. And I think it makes a much cleaner record. And I think when you get to the end of it, it's easier to make that decision than trying to say, well, we're just gonna take it as a whole. I think you have to hit all three of those issues. And it doesn't matter which one you start with. Actually, the DNR letter really summarizes the three things you gotta look at.
Yep.
You need physical limitations, no harm to the public interest, an unnecessary hardship. And you have to agree that all of them exist before you can grant it.
I guess in general discussion, is a lack of a garage a hardship? Not necessarily. I've never seen a rule on that.
I don't think that's, I mean, from a legal standpoint, I don't think there's nothing that says in the statutes that that's an unnecessary hardship. I think sometimes you can say, you can make an argument that based on the weather and circumstances, we think it is, and this is why. But I think you also say, look, you bought it with what's on the property, and is it an unnecessary hardship to keep it that way? So I mean, I think you can make an argument both ways, but the argument's got to be made and discuss the reasons why it is or isn't.
Well, I think we've talked about this in the past, when lake homes have got bigger and used to be used Labor Day, Memorial Day, they've gotten bigger, they're year round. Maybe there is a little more of a hardship for a garage there if somebody comes in the winter, but, I think that's probably a seasonal cabin or very close to it. And somebody lives in Venice, Florida, according to the tax roll. So I don't know if that argument holds a lot of weight with me in that.
If this application is rejected as it's being presented this evening, when would the applicants be allowed to reapply?
If it's not stated in your motion that you're waiving it, it would be 1 year from date of denial. So it could be reheard again.
But we could waive that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the same process starts over. Letters to the neighbors and to the town board and to the department and.
Yep.
Well, 200-foot expansion doesn't mean the variance, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So how would you be thinking to give them more time to try to find something to attach to the house or?
Yes,
But you're still gonna have setback issues.
Open? Yeah,
I understand that.
Yeah. And then you talked about big trees, Jay, is there actually some big maples there that would have to come down?
I probably have some photos that show.
There was a comment earlier about rebuilding on the same footprint and
So I mean, that's
type
one of them.
a type of structure that would have a duck under garage or living quarters above where the vehicles are stored, which makes a lot of sense to me.
Didn't they say in their application why they didn't feel that would work for them? I do remember reading.
That was an attached garage, I thought, Laura.
It's a tuck under it. Tucking the garage into the side yard would make the least encroachment most visibly from the road and again allow us to landscape the surrounding yard to be good for the shoreline. Because it's not something I would have done about.
Yeah, any movement of the garage on the property would still require a variance unless it was
In the
new construction underneath. So what do you think?
Hey, I have an opinion, but I don't think I'm allowed to talk because I'm an alternate.
You're,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
Well, I think you're part of the public, you can talk, you just can't vote.
yeah, that's true.
We tried to stay away from the alternate having discussion because then he can sway your minds and he's actually represented as an alternate as part of the board. Make things less messy, I would refrain from it, but.
That's one point.
Okay, thank you. Okay, applicants, based on the discussion that you've heard us having up here, do you have any additional comments you'd like to make?
Step up to the microphone.
Yeah, if you do, you need to step up to the mic. Okay, all right, thank you.
I mean, is there a chance that we can pull some of these setbacks a little bit better, as far as a little bit further away from the road, a little bit further away from the lake? With an attached garage somewhere onto here with the doors facing back to the north? Yeah, to a few feet here and there, sure. But again, it would still require a variance, and most likely it would still probably be a variance for both. To have any really type of width to the garage.
That application, depending on what it looked like, would be more palatable to me. The way it's being presented this evening, I just don't think the lot's big enough for that size structure to be added on. The road setback and lake setback and this 35% thing, are just too many moving parts.
I did find, our property is narrow. The only other plan would be to have a new house with a tuck under garage with the continued house as a second story. And that wouldn't work. Too many stairs, and it would be a lot of building close to the road.
Well, it wouldn't be any more building necessarily as far as distance.
Right, that's
Yeah,
what's on
yeah,
their application.
It'd be a larger structure vertically.
Right.
Second story then.
Yeah.
If we get over the perimeter once.
They're,
Well, and probably the reason you don't want that plan is, they can build 2 stories of living space and it's just a duck under garage. And it's basically their first floor is not living space.
but we,
Or only half living space.
Whatever.
Yeah, tuck under garage, and again, I'm not making a recommendation or anything. I'm just looking at the actual distance, because again, they wouldn't really be able to expand closer to the lake. They wouldn't be able to expand closer to the road. The depth of the cabin is 20.5 feet.
That would hardly be big
pretty
enough.
standard nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, that big car in the driveway would fit in there.
So, I mean, and I don't tell people what to do. I think if you start with, is there a unique physical limitation to the property? I mean, you can agree or disagree on that, but if you say, yes, there is, based on size, you can go on, is there a harm to the public interest? And I think the one that you're stuck on is the last one, is there an unnecessary hardship? Or you can start with unnecessary hardship and not do the other ones. But I think zeroing in on each element, so that if you're gonna approve it or deny it, you have a reason. And once you say one item doesn't exist, or one area doesn't exist, we're done. But does that make sense, or does that not make sense?
It does. I mean, my question is with the hardship though, how is it unnecessary? It apparently wasn't a necessary hardship when they bought it because the lot didn't get any smaller. It's.
We used to have some of these in front of judges and, they used to say, I need a bigger bathroom. So I need an addition in some areas. Well, you really need a bigger bathroom or do you not? And that comes into what you as a board think and whether you can fit it into unnecessary hardship or whether you don't think it is. That's where you get the big dollars.
One of the biggest concerns, I think you alluded to it, there are several of these irregular, non-conforming lots throughout the Sawyer County Lakes area. Because they are existing, most people want them to allow or to be allowed to have almost the same amenities and improvements that the conventional standard lots have. unfortunately, that's just not the way reality is. This is a substandard, irregular, non-conforming situation in many ways that you can't normalize, so to speak. I'm not sure this can pass the water test on all directions. It's a challenge.
But at least in listening to you, you're not talking about the property limitations. You said small, you're not talking about public interest. You're talking about is not having this garage an unnecessary hardship.
No.
And I think that's where everybody's kind of,
Oh, no,
yeah, and is it or is it not? And I think that may be where you start or where you finish, but if you want to start there, then that's.
I can understand, and I'm talking on both sides of the argument. I can understand claiming a hardship not to have a garage in northern Wisconsin, especially in a year like a couple of years ago. That would have been a burden for habitation and environmental use of that property. That being said, there are lots of properties without garages that don't have the space for a conforming or an adaptive garage scenario. So it's really a challenging decision on what the logic is that we can support.
What about the construction of a smaller building? What would that mean to the setbacks? What would be a minimum size for a single car garage?
Well, it's 24
Which
now.
would still be more storage than what they have now with the bunkhouse and the shed.
Well, it's pretty big.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Probably the base size of a single car garage.
Close.
Close.
I believe by 12 and a half. I would say that is a single.
I don't think this variance has exhausted the options. I know it may not be what is desired, but we have to go beyond that. In a least case scenario, it could be changed and moved toward the house to increase setbacks from the lake and the road. I think a driveway scenario could possibly be worked out coming from the other end. That's more palatable in my way of thinking, but it still comes down to, is it a hardship?
It's a hardship in my mind, but it was sort of self-created hardship because they bought it that way.
Say that again, Jim?
It's a hardship, but it was sort of a self-created hardship because that's the way it was when they bought it, I assume. And I realize people's plans change and now maybe they're thinking they're gonna tear it down and live up here year round, and I wouldn't want a garage too.
All right, any further discussion? Anyone care to make a motion to either approve or deny?
Again, I think you can do that. I think you pick the element that you might want to address, and if someone's gonna deny, we start with why we don't think it's unnecessary hardship, or why we don't think there's, it's a issue with the environment, with, no harm to the public or the unique physical limitations. But I don't think a general denial works. I think you can say it's denied because we don't cite this, but I think you gotta be specific in approvals and denials as to why we're denied. I think it's gotta be based on one of those.
Doesn't that usually come out in our findings of fact?
Well, I think it does, but I think the motion, I think it's better to say, I think in the motion that I'm denying because I don't feel that there's, unnecessary hardship. I don't feel that, I think it would cause harm to the public interest, or I think that there's not a unique physical limitation to the property. And I'm not saying you gotta be specific, but at least I think you direct on which one of those, you're zeroing in on.
Yeah, and part of my staff report has those types of kind of reasonings that if you are going to deny that you're denying based upon unnecessary hardship because of this condition, or if you're denying based upon unique physical limitations, that there are specific conditions of that unique physical limitation. So again, you're supporting your decision by kind of using that staff report. So it's a couple of pages from the beginning there for denial conditions, approval conditions based upon those 3 statutory requirements. So again, that's where you're trying to structure a motion with that.
And like I said, they're not exhaustive what he's put in there, but it's a good starting point. Everybody have that or somebody did? You can make another copy if you did. Good.
Don't. Sorry, hardship. It's for unique physical limitations, it's just for harm to public interest, and these are kind of some of those conditions for each one of those statutory requirements. Gotcha.
Anyone care to make a motion? All right, I will. I'm gonna make a motion to deny the request as presented. The applicants, already currently have a reasonable use of the property and unnecessary hardship does not exist. It complies with the other 2, steps of the 3-step test, but this one is, takes it beyond, the limits and still allows, reasonable use of the property. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Motion been made and seconded by Jim. Discussion by the board.
Can we include that, I don't know if you call it a waiver of the 1-year waiting period? I think we should allow them to, if they want to reorganize and come back sooner, I would be all for that.
Yes. Kathy, is there a way to incorporate that language into my motion?
You would want to amend your motion,
Okay.
you want a second to the amendment.
Okay. I would amend my motion to allow the applicants to reapply in whatever time frame they feel is convenient.
I would second that.
That would be the second of the motion. Yes, okay.
So motion has been made and seconded and has been amended and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion as presented, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Let the record reflect that the motion passed by a vote of 5-0. Okay, thank you.
You kind of went through the findings as part of the motion, which I think we're good there. We got them all in there. I will. I need mine back, actually, Jim. And then new business.
say yes, isn't it?
Uh,
I didn't know how to say it.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to say it.
Thanks. New business, we have our meeting dates for 2025. Because we probably are not going to have another variance case this year, maybe one in December. I'm running out to a property on Monday to potentially look at a variance. That would be our potentially only one that I know of for December. But otherwise, we want to get the 2025 dates to you to see if there's any objections. We historically have always run the 3rd Tuesday of every month. Looking at the calendar, the always one that we kind of circle is around November gun deer season. That shouldn't cause an issue. That's the Tuesday before the gun deer season, which I don't see any issues there. But ultimately, looks this over, we would be looking for a motion and a second approval of the 2025 BOA schedule.
I'll make
Make a
that
motion to approve the BOA 2025 calendar as presented.
The only
No, you-
conflict I would have would be the March one.
We don't have baseball in the March.
They do in Arizona.
Oh,
That's what you guys are planning on.
Yeah, and if there's, yeah, there was a couple people that wanted to make a motion. I don't, who made the motion
oh, did somebody?
Laura did,
and who seconded?
nobody yet.
I will.
Oh,
He said-
she did, okay. All right, discussion on the motion. I'll throw that back in there. I would have a conflict in March, but there's no,
Guaranteed we'd have one, right?
and maybe there won't be a meeting in March and
That would be my preference.
Snowbirds.
okay, so, yeah. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion as presented, saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. It passes.
We'll zoom you in someplace.
No, you won't. No, I don't Zoom. Barely dial my own cell phone.
There's a dial-in number. You can listen.
No, I know you're gonna have it. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
All right, second. All fair, aye.
Aye.
All right, thanks for attending, Joe.
Yes.